In Acts of the Apostles, there's a very interesting parallel. As far as Pentecost and the latter rain, we have a type and an antitype, okay, or a parallel. And listen to this next statement with what I would call the glasses here, the final event glasses, or looking at women's ordination and some of these other issues. Not just women's ordination, but many issues in this statement. After a time, the zeal of the believers began to wane, and their love for God and for one another grew less. Coldness crept into the church. You feel like that's happening? Some forgot the wonderful manner in which they had received the truth. Now, I just put 1844 here on the screen because to me that seems very similar to 1844 as well, doesn't it? Even though this is talking about, the apostles. One by one, the old standard bearers fell at their posts. This is happening right now. Some of the younger workers who might have shared the burdens of these pioneers and thus have been prepared for what? Oh, wise leadership, not just leadership. Had become weary of oft repeated truths. It means they're tired of it. In their desire for something novel and startling, they attempted to introduce new phases of doctrine, more pleasing to many minds, but not in harmony with the fundamental principles of the gospel. In their self-confidence and spiritual blindness, they failed to discern that these sophistries would cause many to question the experiences of the past and would thus lead to confusion and unbelief. It sounds like it's talking to us now, doesn't it? As these false doctrines were urged, differences sprang up. The eyes of many were turned from beholding Jesus as the author and finisher of their faith. Too busy fighting, weren't they? The discussion of unimportant points of doctrine and the contemplation of pleasing fables of man's invention occupied the time that should have been spent in proclaiming the gospel. The masses that might have been convicted and converted by a faithful presentation of the truth were left unwarned. Piety was rapidly waning, and Satan seemed about to gain the ascendancy over those who claimed to be followers of Christ. Now, if I hadn't given you the context on that, you probably would have thought it was talking about today. Right? It's quite clear. So, history. Slippery slope of compromise. Consequences will result from one wrong step. Is that a good observation? To Eve, it seemed a small thing to disobey God by tasting the fruit of the forbidden tree and to tempt her husband also to transgress. But their sin opened the floodgates of woe upon the world. Who can know in the moment of temptation the terrible consequences that will result from one wrong step? Patriarchs and prophets. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Episcopal Church. The Episcopal Church has been in the news a fair amount in the past few years. And why is that? They began to ordain homosexual priests. And as I thought about that, I was impressed to go back and study their history. How did they get to that point? Did it just happen? Or was it a series of compromises? Let's take a look at their history. The events that led to the ordination of homosexual bishops in 2003. 1976, women's ordination was permitted. This is what it says at Wikipedia. You can look this up for yourself. The General Convention permitted the ordination of women in 1976. The first women were canonically ordained to the priesthood in 1977. So it was the very next year they ordained women, correct? The Episcopal Church affirmed at the 1976 convention also that homosexuals are children of God who deserve acceptance and pastoral care from the church and equal protection under the law. Now, I'm not going to take a huge issue with that, but what I will do is I will summarize. They softened their stance towards homosexuality. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. The first openly homosexual priest, Ellen Barrett, was ordained when? So they wasted no time with this. 1 year. Not only did they have women's ordination, but they were already moving into the ordination of homosexuals to the priesthood. Now, priest in their hierarchical structure in their church, priest is like pastor for us, all right? Then you have bishop above that, okay? Do you understand? So we're talking about at the priest level with both of these. That would be the local congregation level, okay? Does that make sense? Now, 1989, the first female bishop was ordained, okay? So now we're moving up the chain. The first female bishop, Barbara Harris, was consecrated on February 11, 1989. At the time of the formation of ACNA, 3 U.S. dioceses did not ordain women at all. All dioceses of TEC are now ordain women. The 2006 election of Jeffords Shorey as the church's 26th presiding bishop was controversial in the wider Anglican community because she is a woman, and the full communion does not recognize the ordination of women. Now, I just want to ask you, we're already partway into this mess, okay, in this timeline of history. Where did it start, friends? It started with the ordination of women. Or am I wrong? Now, I would also say there's a lot of compromise probably led to that decision. Is that fair to say? She's the only national leader of the church in the Anglican community who is a woman. In addition, 8 American dioceses have rejected her authority and have asked the Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, to assign them to another national leader. I'm going to ask you, did this cause major strife and division in their church? Was this a really good idea? I'm sure it was pushed as a good idea. But in practicality, how did it work out? Do we want to go down the same road? We've got plenty of examples, even modern history. Why would we do this? 1991. They tried to reaffirm marriage, but it was too late, friends. It was too late. Despite the affirmation of gay rights, the General Convention affirmed in 1991 that physical sexual expression is only appropriate within the monogamous lifelong union of husband and wife. Now I'm going to ask you, 1991, is that a little late compared to 1976? Where was this back in 1976? It's a slippery road, isn't it? One step leads to another, and we've been given warnings in history. 2003, the first homosexual bishop, the first openly homosexual bishop that they know about, Gene Robinson, was elected June 2003. They elected him. Anybody seen the last page of the Gleaner that just arrived a day or two ago? I'll just leave it at that. We'll move on. But there's a warning there, friends. We're headed down the same road, and I'm concerned. The meeting's final communique included the warning that if Robinson's consecration proceeded, 2003, It would tear the fabric of the communion at its deepest level. That was homosexual. But where did it start? Remember where it started. Now, I'm going to meddle. This scared me. The Seventh-day Adventist Church on Wednesday, talking about October, this last October, reaffirmed its stance against homosexual activity and same-sex marriage, but also softened the denomination's position statement to offer compassion towards gay and lesbians. Now, I'm all for compassion, all right? Seriously. I know people that are, that have this problem. Don't get me wrong. But I would like to say this came right at about the same time that the whole eruption came on women's ordination again, and we started talking about it. And this just slipped through and nobody noticed. This is Adventist News Network, friends. I know I'm making this up. So do you see why I'm a little concerned? Honestly, do you think that my concerns are founded here? It seems like we're headed down the same road. Now, just recently, the Church of England, this is incredible. January 4, this year, the Church of England ended its ban on gay bishops. And not but maybe within a month or so, in this case, discussing women's ordination because it's such a big issue within their church. Now, incidentally, in this particular case, they voted against ordaining women, and then they lifted the ban on homosexuals. All right? Now, to me, that's just ludicrous. But again, how many parallels do I have to draw for you? Are we following down the same slippery slope? And I see it. I can observe the facts. Like I said before, I'm just a layperson. I haven't been through seminary, I haven't been through these things, but I will simply say this. I can observe action to consequence. I can see and read my Bible, and I see trouble coming in our church.